There's a moment in every family's history when everything changes. A single conversation that splits time into before and after. For the Hutchins family, that moment came on a January morning in 2005 in a farmhouse kitchen in rural Indiana when a 71-year-old widow named Evelyn Margaret Hutchins gathered her three daughters and told them a story she'd kept buried for 32 years. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Have you ever ignored advice that could have saved you? Of course you have. We all have. Someone older, wiser, who'd lived through the exact situation you were walking into tried to warn you. And you smiled, nodded, thanked them politely, then did exactly what you wanted anyway. Maybe it was your parents warning you about a relationship, a friend cautioning you about a mentor suggesting you reconsider a major decision. You thought times have changed. I'm different. I know better. This is a story about three sisters who thought exactly that. One listened, two didn't. 19 years later, one of them owns four houses debt-free. The others are still recovering from bankruptcy. The difference, just one decision. Made in 2000, in a farmhouse kitchen in Indiana, when a dying woman told them something they didn't want to hear. Let me show you where this story ends before I tell you how it began. September 17th, 2013, Tuesday morning. The heat was oppressive even though it was supposed to be fall. Indiana in September. Sticky, humid. The kind of weather that makes your shirt cling to your back. A crowd of about 40 people gathered in the driveway of a large colonial house on Maple Ridge Drive. White columns, black shutters, a wraparound porch with hanging baskets of flowers that were now dead brown husks swaying in the breeze. The flowers had died because no one was living there anymore. A man in a cheap suit stood on the front steps holding a clipboard, an auctioneer from the county. Behind him, a banner read, "Bank Foreclosure Sale." The kind of banner that turns neighbors into vultures and former friends into strangers who pretend they don't see you at the grocery store. In the crowd standing near the back, a woman in her early 60s. Thin, graying hair pulled into a tight bun. She wore a navy blazer that looked expensive 8 years ago but was worn at the elbows now. Her name was Colette Hutchins Bradford, and this was her house being sold. Next to her, another woman, younger, late 40s, blonde hair and a severe ponytail. Designer sunglasses even though the sun wasn't that bright. She was crying, but quietly the kind of crying where you're trying very hard not to let anyone see. Her name was Vivian Bradford, Colette's sister-in-law. And in 3 minutes, she was going to watch her own house get auctioned off too. The auctioneer began his pitch. Fast talking, numbers flying, bidders raising their hands. "We have 295. Do I hear 300? 300. Thank you, sir. Do I hear 310? Colette closed her eyes. She'd bought this house in 2005 for $485,000. She'd put $140,000 into renovations. Granite countertops, hardwood floors, a kitchen that could have been in a magazine. The bank was selling it for $295,000. She was losing almost $300,000 in 8 years. "Sold," the auctioneer shouted, to bidder number 17 for $312,000. Colette opened her eyes. Bidder 17 was walking toward the auctioneer. A woman, mid-50s, plain clothes, sensible shoes. She handed the auctioneer a cashier's check. Not a loan approval, not a mortgage pre-qualification. A check for the full amount. Cash buyer. The woman turned and Colette felt her stomach drop. It was Beatrice, her youngest sister. The one everyone had laughed at for 8 years because she drove an old Honda and bought her clothes at Target. Beatrice walked over. She didn't smile, didn't gloat, just looked at Colette with sad eyes and said quietly, "You can stay 6 months. Rent-free. Find your footing." Colette started crying then. Not quiet crying, the kind that comes from somewhere deep. The kind that happens when you finally understand how badly you have failed and how much grace you don't deserve but are receiving anyway. Vivian turned and walked away. She didn't say goodbye. She got in her leased BM, the one the bank would repossess in 3 weeks, and drove off. Colette never saw her again. 8 years earlier, January 2005. The Hutchins farmhouse sat on 40 acres of flat Indiana land, about 20 miles outside Bloomington. It wasn't a working farm anymore. Evelyn's late husband Thomas had sold the livestock and equipment 15 years before he died. But the house remained. Solid. 200 years old. The kind of house where 5 generations had been born and 3 generations had died. Thomas Hutchins passed away in March of 2003, 2 weeks after his 74th birthday. Heart attack. Quick. He was feeding the chickens 1 minute and gone the next. The kind of death that's merciful if you're the one dying and devastating if you're the one left behind. Evelyn was 69 when Thomas died. She'd loved him for 50 years, married for 48. She wore black for a year the old-fashioned way, and when she finally stopped, she realized she was sitting on more money than she'd ever imagined. Thomas had been careful, disciplined. The farm was paid off. The equipment was sold. There was a life insurance policy neither of them had ever talked about. When everything was settled, Evelyn had $520,000 in the bank and a house with no mortgage. She didn't need that much money. She knew it. She was 71 years old and her needs were simple. Coffee in the morning, crossword puzzles in the afternoon, church on Sundays, a phone call from one of her daughters every few days. So in January of 2005, on a Saturday morning, when the temperature was 14 degrees and the wind made it feel like zero, Evelyn called her three daughters and told them to come to the farmhouse. All three of them, together. They came. They always came when Evelyn called. Colette arrived first. She always did. Punctual, organized. Type A personality that had served her well in real estate. She was 43 years old, tall, attractive in a sharp-edged way. She wore designer jeans and a cashmere sweater. Her nails were professionally done. Her highlights were fresh. She drove a leased Mercedes E-Class, silver, the kind of car that said she was successful without saying she was rich. Because she wasn't rich, not really. But she looked like she was, and in real estate that mattered. Her husband Garrett came with her. He was quiet, an engineer at Cummins, good salary, stable job. He let Colette make the decisions about money, which in hindsight was a mistake, but he didn't know that yet. Rosalind arrived second. Everyone called her Roz. She was 40 years old, softer than Colette in every way. Rounder, kinder. She taught third grade at Jefferson Elementary and had for 18 years. She loved her job and was good at it, but it didn't pay much. $41,000 a year. Her husband Theodore worked construction. $48,000 a year when the weather was good. They drove a 2002 Ford Explorer with 120,000 miles on it. It needed new brakes. They'd get them next month. Beatrice arrived last. She was always last because she never rushed. She was 36 years old, the baby of the family, and she'd inherited her father's temperament. Steady, deliberate, unflappable. She worked as a CPA at a small firm in town. $52,000 a year. Not glamorous, but stable. Her husband Warren worked for the same firm. $55,000 a year. Together they made $107,000, which was solidly middle class in Indiana in 2005. They drove a 2004 Honda Accord. Gray, cloth seats, no navigation system, no leather. It had 38,000 miles on it and would run for another 200,000 if they took care of it, which they would. The kitchen of the Hutchins farmhouse was warm despite the cold outside. Evelyn had made coffee. Strong, black, the way Thomas used to drink it. She'd set out cups and cream and sugar, though she knew Colette wouldn't touch the sugar and Roz would use too much. The three daughters sat around the old oak table, the same table where they'd done homework as children, where they'd fought over the last piece of pie, where their father had taught them to play poker with matchsticks because he didn't believe in gambling with real money. Evelyn stood at the counter, her back to them for a moment. She was gathering herself, preparing. This was going to be harder than she thought. When she turned around, the three of them saw something in her face that made them sit up straighter. "Girls," Evelyn said. Her voice was steady, controlled. "I need to talk to you about money." Colette's eyes lit up slightly. She'd been wondering about the inheritance. They all had, though, only Colette had been calculating it. "Your father and I were blessed," Evelyn continued. "We lived within our means. We saved. We planned. And when he passed, he left me well provided for." She paused, looked at each of them. "I have $520,000. The house is paid off. My needs are small. I've decided to divide the money between the three of you now, while I'm alive, rather than make you wait." Roz's mouth fell open slightly. That was more money than she'd imagined. Colette was already doing math in her head. 520 divided by 3. 173 each. More than enough for the renovation she'd been planning. Beatrice watched her mother's face and said nothing. She knew there was more coming. "Before I give you this money," Evelyn said, and her voice changed, got harder. "I need to tell you a story I've never told anyone except your father, and he's not here anymore to remind you, so I have to." She sat down, wrapped her hands around her coffee mug. The kitchen was silent except for the ticking of the clock on the wall. "It was 1973, Evelyn began. "I was 39 years old. Your father was working at the mill. We were doing fine. Not rich, but comfortable. We had this house. We had 3 young daughters. We had enough." She paused, looked out the window at the frozen fields. But I wanted more. Not more money exactly, more presentation. The neighbors had new furniture, they had nice jewelry, they took vacations, and I felt less than. Do you understand? The daughters nodded. They understood that feeling, that gnawing sense that everyone else had figured out how to live better. So I went to the bank, Evelyn said, took out a personal loan, $18,000. Beatrice's eyes widened. In 1973, that's like 140,000 today, Evelyn finished. I told myself it was an investment. New living room furniture, a dining set, some jewelry, a fur coat because everyone was wearing fur coats. Colette shifted uncomfortably. This story was starting to feel familiar. The payments were $350 a month. We could afford it, barely, but we could. For the first year, I felt wonderful. Our house looked like something from a magazine. When people came over, I felt proud. Evelyn's voice got quieter. Then 1974 happened. Inflation. Your father's hours at the mill got cut. Not fired, just fewer hours. Our income dropped by about 30%. But the payment stayed $350. She looked at Colette. 350 doesn't sound like much when you're making good money. But when your income drops and your payment stays the same, it becomes a monster. We started missing payments. The interest compounded. By 1976, we owed $22,000 on an $18,000 loan. What happened? Roz asked quietly. Evelyn's eyes got distant. My mother bailed us out. Your grandmother. She was 83 years old. She owned a little cottage in town, paid off worth about $30,000. She sold it, gave us the money. We paid off the loan. That was good of her, Beatrice said softly. It killed her, Evelyn said, and the words hung in the air like smoke. The daughter stared. She moved in with us. We gave her the spare bedroom. She lived here for 2 years, and every single day I could see it in her eyes. The disappointment, the hurt, not anger, worse, sadness. She'd worked 40 years to buy that cottage. It was her independence, her pride, and she sold it to save me from my own stupidity. Evelyn's voice cracked slightly. She died in 1978. Stroke. But I know what really killed her. It was watching me waste her sacrifice. Because even after she saved us, I wanted things. I looked at what other people had and felt less than. The kitchen was absolutely silent now. Your father sat me down after the funeral, Evelyn said, and he made me promise something. He said, Evelyn, never again. Never finance your lifestyle. If we can't pay cash, we don't buy it. Possessions depreciate. Debt doesn't. She looked at each daughter in turn. I kept that promise for 27 years. When Thomas died, we owned everything. The farm, the equipment, the furniture, the cars, everything. No debt, and that's why I have $520,000 to give you. She stood up, walked to the counter, came back with 3 envelopes. I'm giving each of you $173,000. Beatrice gets an extra 1,000 because she's the baby and I'm the mother and I can do that. Weak smiles, nervous laughter. But I'm giving you this money with one condition, not a legal condition. I can't control what you do, but a mother's plea. Evelyn's voice was steady again, strong. Never finance your lifestyle, not your furniture, not your cars, not your vacations, not your clothes. If you can't pay cash, you can't afford it. Debt is a trap. It looks like freedom. It's a peshimo. She placed the envelopes on the table. Your grandmother died to teach me that lesson. I'm telling you for free. Please listen. Colette picked up her envelope. She could feel the weight of the check in Maya's $173,000. Her mind was already racing. The house on Maple Ridge Drive, the one she'd been watching for 2 years, 4 bedrooms, 3.5 baths, a gourmet kitchen that needed updating but had good bones. It was listed at $485,000. Mom, Colette said carefully, I hear what you're saying, but times have changed since the 70s. Interest rates are low, real estate appreciates. This is different. Evelyn looked at her oldest daughter. She'd known Colette would say something like this. Colette had always been the one who believed the rules didn't apply to her. Is it different? Evelyn asked quietly. Yes, Colette said. I'm a realtor. I understand leverage. You're talking about consumer debt, furniture, jewelry. I'm talking about assets that appreciate. A house is only an asset when you sell it, Evelyn said. While you're living in it, it's an expense. But it builds equity, Colette countered. Does it? Or does the bank own it until you make the last payment? Colette felt frustration rising. Mom, with all respect, you and Dad live small. That worked for you. But I have different goals. I want to build wealth. You can't do that playing it safe. Evelyn was quiet for a long moment. Every generation says that, Colette. My mother said it to her mother during the Depression. I said it to my mother in the 70s. Now you're saying it to me. But it's true, Colette insisted. The economy is stronger. Banks are smarter. People understand leverage now. People understood leverage in 29 too, Evelyn said quietly, right before the crash. Mom, you're being pessimistic. I'm being realistic. I'm 71 years old. I've lived through 3 recessions. I've seen this pattern before. It always feels different. It never is. Roz spoke up. What if we're careful about it? What if we only borrow a little? There's no such thing as a little debt, honey. It grows. It always grows. Beatrice had been quiet through all of this. Now she spoke. Mom, I hear you, and I'm listening. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. She reached across and squeezed Beatrice's hand. Thank you, baby. Colette stood. I appreciate this, Mom, I really do. But I'm 43 years old. I think I can make my own financial decisions. Of course you can, Evelyn said. I'm not trying to control you. I'm trying to save you from what I went through, from what your grandmother went through. I understand, but I'm comfortable with the risk. Evelyn nodded slowly. She looked tired suddenly, older than 71. I hope you're right, she said. I really do. 3 weeks later, Colette closed on the house on Maple Ridge Drive, $485,000. She put down 35% using the proceeds from her old house and kept her mother's money for renovations. Her mortgage payment was $2,650 a month. She told herself it was fine. She was making $95,000 a year in real estate. Garrett was making $80,000. They could afford it. The day after closing, she took out a home equity line of credit for $140,000. The bank approved it immediately. The house appraised for $490,000, so they were happy to lend. She hired contractors, knocked out the wall, ordered the granite, the Wolf range, the Sub-Zero refrigerator, custom cabinets, hardwood floors throughout. The renovation took 4 months, cost $158,000, $10,000 over budget, but she put that on a credit card. She'd pay it off when she sold her next house. Colette stood in her new kitchen on a Saturday in September granite, gleaming under pendant lights, and felt like she'd arrived. Finally, success, security, status. What she didn't know, what she couldn't have known was that in exactly 48 months, she'd stand in the same kitchen and watch strangers cart away everything she'd built. But that was still years away. For now, she was winning. Rose waited 2 months. She went back and forth. Theodore said it was up to her. He'd support whatever she decided. Finally, in April, she called a mortgage broker. They qualified for $320,000. With $50,000 down from her mother's money, they could get a nice house in a good neighborhood. They found a place. 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, a yard for the kids. The elementary school was rated 9 out of 10, but the payment was going to be $2,200 a month. That was more than half Theodore's income in a good month. The broker said it was fine. Everyone's house poor these days. He laughed. That's just how it is. But Roz kept hearing her mother's voice. Debt is a trap. In the end, she compromised. She bought a used Lexus RX instead. $55,000. She put down $20,000 from her mother's money and financed $35,000 over 5 years. The payment was $640 a month. It felt reasonable, responsible even. Not like what Colette was doing. Theodore was happy with the SUV. It was safe, reliable. Nice enough that Roz felt good pulling up to school. She kept the rest of her mother's money in savings, $153,000. Emergency fund, college fund, future. Roz pulled into her driveway in the burgundy Lexus and felt for the first time in years like she'd done something right, something that said she mattered. $640 a month seemed reasonable, manageable, smart even. She had no way of knowing that in 37 months, she'd sell this car for pennies on the dollar and buy a 15-year-old Civic just to survive. But today she felt successful. Beatrice did exactly what she'd planned. She and Warren paid off their house. 13 years left on a 15-year mortgage, $108,000 balance. Gone. They maxed out both 401ks. $32,000 a year total. Put $50,000 in a high-yield savings account as an emergency fund. invested $60,000 in index funds through Vanguard. They kept driving the 2004 Honda Accord. They kept buying clothes at Target and Kohl's. They kept having date night at Applebee's on Thursdays because that's when they had the 2 for 20 deal. Nothing changed on the outside, but everything had changed on the inside. They owned their house, they had no debt. They had $180,000 in investments that would grow for the next 30 years. For the first time in their lives, they felt safe. Not rich, safe. 6 months after that January morning in the farmhouse, the three Hutchins daughters gathered again. Easter dinner, Evelyn's tradition, ham, scalloped potatoes, green bean casserole, strawberry pie. They sat around the same oak table. But everything was different now. Colette's renovation was almost done. She showed pictures on her phone. The kitchen was stunning. Professional grade. The kind of kitchen you'd see in a home magazine. It's going to add at least $100,000 to the value, she said confidently. We'll have $600,000 in equity in 5 years. Roz showed pictures of her new Lexus. Burgundy, leather seats, navigation system. It's so safe, she said. I feel good driving the kids around. Beatrice had no pictures to show. Her life looked exactly the same as it had 6 months ago. Same house, same car, same everything. Colette's sister-in-law, Vivian, was there too. She'd just bought a house of her own, $650,000. Interior designer's dream, she called it. She'd leveraged everything, mortgaged to the hilt. But it was beautiful. Vivian arrived late, making an entrance. She wore a cream-colored suit that probably cost $600 and carried a Prada bag that definitely cost more. She set down her offering store-bought artisan bread, $18 from Whole Foods, and surveyed the table. Beatrice, she said loudly, too loudly, the kind of volume meant to draw attention. You're still driving that Honda? The conversation at the table stopped. Everyone looked. Beatrice set down her fork calmly. Yes. Honey, Vivian said, her voice dripping with fake concern. You're 37 years old. Don't you think it's time to upgrade? I mean, what will people think? I don't know, Vivian, Beatrice said evenly. What do people think? That you're cheap, Vivian said, laughing like it was a joke, even though it clearly wasn't. That you can't afford better. I can't afford better, Beatrice said. I choose not to buy better. Why, Vivian pressed. Why live like you're poor when you're not? I do enjoy them, Beatrice said. I sleep well at night. What's that supposed to mean? Vivian's smile had turned sharp. It means my car is paid off. My house is paid off. I don't owe anyone anything. That's enjoyment. That's boring, Vivian said. Life is short, Beatrice. You can't take it with you. Why hoard money you're never going to spend? Warren, who'd been silent until now, spoke up. We're not hoarding, we're building freedom. Freedom, Vivian laughed. Freedom to drive a car that looks like it belongs in a high school parking lot. Freedom to quit our jobs if we want, Warren said calmly. Freedom to say no to things we don't want to do. Freedom to not lose sleep over debt payments. I don't lose sleep, Vivian said, but something in her eyes flickered. Just for a second. Evelyn's voice cut through from the end of the table. Quiet but firm. Vivian, that's enough. I'm just saying. I know what you're saying, Evelyn interrupted, and I'm telling you to stop. Beatrice doesn't need to defend her choices to anyone. An uncomfortable silence settled over the table. Vivian forced a smile. Of course, I didn't mean anything by it, just making conversation. But the damage was done. The dinner continued, but the warmth had leaked out of it. As they were leaving, Evelyn pulled Beatrice aside. Don't let them make you doubt yourself, she whispered. I won't, Mama. They're the ones who are scared. That's why they attack you, because your choices remind them of their mistakes. I know. Evelyn kissed her daughter's forehead. Keep doing what you're doing, baby. Time will prove you right. That night, after everyone had left, Evelyn sat in her living room. The same living room where she'd once had $18,000 worth of furniture that she didn't own. Furniture the bank had almost repossessed. She was tired. More than tired. She'd been feeling off for months, forgetting things. Small things at first. Where she put her keys, what day it was, the name of that actor in that movie. Last week she'd forgotten her own phone number, just for a minute. But it had scared her. She had a doctor's appointment scheduled for next month. She'd been putting it off. But she knew, somehow she knew, her mother had died of a stroke at 85. But before the stroke, there'd been the forgetting, the confusion, the slow erasure of self. Evelyn was 71. If she was lucky, she had 7 years. If she wasn't, less. She wanted to see her daughters settled before she forgot them, before she forgot everything. She'd given them the money. She'd told them the story. She'd warned them. Now all she could do was watch and hope that at least one of them was listening. 2 weeks later, Beatrice received a phone call. Her mother wanted to see her. Alone, not the sisters, just Beatrice. She drove to the farmhouse on a Wednesday afternoon. May. The fields were green. Everything was growing. Evelyn was sitting on the porch. She looked small, fragile. Not the strong woman who'd raised 3 daughters on a factory worker's salary. "Mom," Beatrice said. "You okay?" Evelyn patted the chair next to her. "Sit down, honey." Beatrice sat. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. They just looked out at the fields, the same fields where Beatrice had played as a child, where she'd learned to drive a tractor when she was 12, where her father had taught her that slow and steady wins. "I went to the doctor yesterday," Evelyn said quietly. Beatrice's stomach dropped. "What did he say?" "Early stage Alzheimer's," Evelyn said. Her voice was steady but sad. "Could be 5 years, could be 7, could progress slow, they don't know." Beatrice reached for her mother's hand. It was cold. "Mom, I'm so sorry." "Don't be sorry," Evelyn said. "I've had a good life, better than I deserved after the mistakes I made." "You didn't make mistakes," Beatrice said. "Yes, I did. I almost lost everything, chasing things that didn't matter. Your grandmother saved me, and it cost her everything." Evelyn turned to look at Beatrice. "I'm telling you this because I need you to know something. I need you to understand why I told that story, why I gave you that money, why I begged you not to make my mistake." "I know, Mom." "No, you don't. Not yet. But you will." Evelyn squeezed Beatrice's hand. "Your sisters are going to struggle. I can see it already. Colette with her big house, Roz with her fancy car, Vivian with her palace. They think they're investing. They think they're building equity. But they're building debt. And debt is patient. It waits. It compounds. It grows. And one day when they least expect it, it comes due." "Should I talk to them?" Beatrice asked. "No," Evelyn said. "They won't listen. They think I'm old-fashioned, out of touch. They think this time is different. Everyone thinks their time is different." She looked back at the fields. "But you listened. You and Warren. You paid off your house. You saved. You're going to be fine." "We just did what you taught us," Beatrice said. "I know. And I'm so grateful. Because when this disease takes my mind, when I forget my own name, I need to know that at least one of my daughters is safe, that at least one of you heard me." Tears were running down Beatrice's face now. "I heard you, Mama. I promise," Evelyn nodded. "Good. That's good." They sat together as the sun went down. Mother and daughter, watching the fields turn gold in the fading light. Beatrice drove home that night with tears streaming down her face. Her mother was dying, slowly, cruelly, forgetting everything. But what Beatrice didn't know was that Evelyn's prediction would come true even faster than the Alzheimer's. In 39 months, her sisters would lose everything. In 73 months, Evelyn would be gone. And Beatrice would be the only one left standing, wondering if being right was worth watching everyone else fall. And Beatrice made a silent vow. She would never forget this moment, this lesson, this gift her mother had given her. No matter what happened, no matter how hard it got, no matter how much her sisters mocked her or how much the world told her she was wrong, she would never finance her lifestyle. She would never put herself in a cage. She would stay free. Summer 2005 slipped into fall, and fall faded into winter. The Indiana landscape turned white, then gray, then white again. Life moved forward the way it always does, carrying everyone along, whether they were ready or not. Colette's renovation was complete by September. The house on Maple Ridge Drive was transformed. Professional photos were taken for her real estate portfolio. She hosted an open house not to sell the property but to show it off. 200 people came through. Everyone said the same thing, stunning, gorgeous, like something from HGTV. The granite countertops were perfect. The hardwood floors gleamed. The open concept living space felt massive, expensive, aspirational. This was the kind of house that said you'd made it, that you were somebody. Colette stood in her new kitchen, a glass of Pinot Grigio in her hand, and felt a surge of vindication. Her mother had been wrong. Times had changed. You could leverage debt intelligently. She'd created equity, built wealth. This house would be worth $600,000 in 3 years. Maybe more. Vivian came over that first week and walked through every room. She had her designer's eye cataloging, assessing, calculating. When she finished the tour, she stood in the kitchen and said, "I can do better." Colette laughed. Oh, really? Really, Vivian said. Give me a year. By Christmas 2005, the pattern was set. Colette and Vivian were locked in an unspoken competition. Not hostile, almost playful, but beneath the surface, deadly serious. Vivian bought her house in February 2006, $650,000. A colonial on 2 acres with a circular driveway and a fountain. She put down 8%, the minimum her lender would allow, borrowed the rest, then immediately took out a home equity line of credit for $95,000. The renovations began in March. Vivian did most of the work herself, the design work anyway, contracting out the labor. She had a vision. Mediterranean meets modern farmhouse. Expensive tile from Italy. Light fixtures from a boutique in Chicago. Custom millwork throughout. By June, she'd spent $112,000, $17,000 over her HELOC limit, which she covered with credit cards. The house looked like something from Architectural Digest. Truly, people would slow down driving past just to stare. Vivian's husband, Richard, a quiet man who worked in pharmaceutical sales, began to look worried. But he didn't say anything. He'd learned years ago that once Vivian had a vision, you either supported it or got out of the way. Roz watched her older sister and her sister-in-law with a mixture of admiration and unease. She loved her Lexus. She really did. It was comfortable, safe, beautiful. But compared to what Colette and Vivian were doing, it felt small, insufficient. Theodore noticed her looking at real estate listings online. He'd come home from a job site dirty and tired and find her scrolling through houses they couldn't afford. You thinking about moving? He asked one night in May 2006. Just looking, Roz said. We're fine where we are, Theodore said carefully. Aren't we? Of course, Roz said quickly. I'm just curious what's out there. But she wasn't just curious. She was comparing, measuring, feeling that old familiar sense that everyone else was living better, bigger, more successfully. Her house was 1,200 square feet. Colette's was 3,200. Vivian's was 4,100. Her car was nice, but she'd bought it used. Colette leased a new Mercedes every 3 years. Vivian drove a Range Rover. Roz still bought her clothes at Kohl's and Macy's clearance rack. Colette shopped at Nordstrom. Vivian had a personal shopper. The gap wasn't just financial. It felt existential, like they were living in different worlds even though they sat at the same table for Sunday dinners. Beatrice watched all of this from a distance. Not physically distant. She was at every family gathering, every holiday, every birthday party. But emotionally, she was separate, observing. She and Warren had settled into a rhythm. Their mortgage was paid off. Their house was small but comfortable. The Honda Accord hit 60,000 miles and ran perfectly. They maxed out their 401ks, put money in their emergency fund, invested in index funds every month. Their net worth grew steadily. By the end of 2005, they had $210,000. By the end of 2000, $245,000. They didn't talk about it, not even with each other, really. They just kept doing the same things, working, saving, living below their means. At family gatherings, Beatrice was pleasant but quiet. She didn't share financial details, didn't offer opinions about Colette's renovations or Vivian's decorating choices. She complimented when expected, smiled when appropriate, and left early. Colette found it maddening. Why doesn't she ever share anything? She complained to Garrett one night. It's like she thinks she's better than us. Maybe she's just private, Garrett suggested. No, Colette said. It's judgment. I can feel it. She thinks we're being irresponsible. Are we? Garrett asked quietly. Colette shot him a look. Don't start. The confrontation happened at Vivian's 4th of July barbecue in 2006. Vivian had planned it for weeks, sent formal invitations, hired a caterer, set up a bar in the backyard with a bartender mixing craft cocktails. There were probably 60 people there, family, friends, colleagues, neighbors. The house was open for tours. People walked through in small groups, oohing and aahing at the tile work, lighting the master bathroom with its freestanding tub and chandelier. Beatrice and Warren arrived at 4 in the afternoon. Beatrice wore a simple sundress from Target, $24 on clearance. Warren wore khakis and a polo shirt. They brought a bottle of wine that cost $12. They parked on the street because the circular driveway was full of luxury cars. Benz, Mercedes, Audis, Lexuses. Their 2004 Honda Accord looked like it had wandered into the wrong neighborhood. Vivian greeted them at the door. She was wearing white linen pants and a silk blouse, her hair perfect, her makeup flawless. She looked at Beatrice's dress and smiled. Beatrice, so glad you could make it. Come in, let me give you the tour. The tour took 20 minutes. Every room was a showpiece. Every detail was intentional. The house had cost Vivian over $200,000 in renovations, and it showed. What do you think? Vivian asked when they returned to the kitchen. It's beautiful, Beatrice said honestly. You have a real eye for design. Thank you. It's been exhausting, but so worth it. We're building equity with every improvement. Beatrice didn't respond to that. She just smiled and excused herself to find the bathroom. The backyard was even more impressive. String lights hung between trees. A long table was set for dinner with real china and crystal glasses. The caterer was setting out trays of food that looked like it came from a restaurant. Beatrice found Roz by the bar already on her second glass of wine. Can you believe this? Roz whispered. It's like a magazine spread. It's lovely, Beatrice said. Don't you ever want this? Roz asked. Don't you ever look at what Colette and Vivian have and think, why not me? Beatrice considered the question carefully. Sometimes, she admitted. But then I remember what it keys. It's just money, Roz said. No, Beatrice said quietly. It's freedom. Before Roz could respond, Vivian's voice cut across the yard. Loud, bright, commanding attention. Everyone, can I have your attention, please? The conversations died down. 60 people turned to look at Vivian standing on her back patio like she was giving a toast at a wedding. I just want to say thank you all for coming, Vivian said. Richard and I are so blessed to have friends and family like you. This house has been a labor of love, and we're thrilled to share it with you. People clapped politely. Vivian stood on her patio wine glass in hand and surveyed her guests with the satisfaction of a general reviewing her troops. You know, she continued, I've been thinking a lot lately about different philosophies of life, different approaches to living. Beatrice felt Warren's hand find hers. He sensed it coming. Some people, Vivian said, her eyes scanning the crowd until they landed on Beatrice, believe in saving every penny, living small, denying themselves pleasure because they're terrified of debt. A few uncomfortable glances toward Beatrice. And I understand that impulse, I really do. Fear is powerful. It makes us cautious, makes us play it safe. Colette touched Vivian's arm. But Vivian gently brushed her off. But here's what I think. Life is short. You can't take it with you. You can't put money in the casket. So why not enjoy what you have while you can? She gestured around at the house, the yard, the party. Why not create beauty? Build something amazing. Take risks, dream bigger. She looked directly at Beatrice now. No more pretense. I mean, look at Beatrice. She's 37 years old, driving a Honda. That's what 3 years old for, still shopping at Target, living in the same little 1,200 square foot house she bought when she was 28. The yard was completely silent now. And for what? Vivian pressed. So she can die with a big bank account that she never used, so she can tell herself she was responsible while the rest of us actually lived. Warren stood up. That's enough. I'm just making a point. No, Warren said firmly. You're attacking my wife in front of 60 people because her choices make you uncomfortable. Vivian's face flushed. I'm not attacking anyone. I'm celebrating a different philosophy, a better one. Better, Beatrice spoke for the first time. Her voice was quiet, calm. Is it better, Vivian? Yes, Vivian said. Yes, it is, because I'm living. You're just existing. Beatrice stood, set down her wine glass. You want to know the difference between us, Vivian? Enlighten me. I sleep 8 hours every night. Do you? Vivian's smile faltered. What which? Sleep? Do you sleep well? Or do you lie awake at 3 a.m. wondering how you're going to make all those payments? I sleep fine. Do you? Beatrice asked. Because I see your Facebook posts, the inspirational quotes about trusting the process and staying positive through hard times. That's not celebration, Vivian. That's desperation. The crowd was frozen. This wasn't happening, except it was. You think I'm judging you, Beatrice continued. I'm not. I genuinely hope this works out for you. I hope the market keeps rising. I hope your design business stays busy. I hope Richard never loses his job. I hope nothing ever goes wrong. She picked up her purse. But if something does go wrong, and statistically it will, you're going to lose everything. Not because you're bad with money, because you're leveraged to the ceiling. One missed paycheck away from disaster. She turned to Warren. We should go. As they walked toward the gate, Vivian called after her. You think you're better than everyone? Beatrice stopped, turned. No, Vivian, I think I'm smarter than I used to be. There's a difference. They left. Behind them, the party continued, but the joy had leaked out of it. People made excuses and left early. By 8 p.m., the yard was empty except for Vivian and Richard sitting in silence, surrounded by the beautiful, expensive things that suddenly felt like weights around their necks. That night, Vivian stood in her master bathroom, the one with the Italian tile and the chandelier, and looked at herself in the mirror. Beatrice's words echoed, "Do you sleep well?" The honest answer, no, she hadn't slept well in months, but she'd never admit it. Not to Beatrice, not to anyone. In 32 months, this bathroom would belong to someone else. The tile, the chandelier, the expensive fixtures, all of it sold at auction. But tonight, Vivian swallowed 2 sleeping pills and told herself everything was fine. The fallout from the 4th of July barbecue rippled through the family for weeks. Colette called Beatrice the next day to apologize for Vivian. She'd had too much to drink. She didn't mean it. Yes, she did, Beatrice said calmly. Okay, maybe she did. But B, you have to admit you can be a little judgmental about how other people spend money. I've never said a word about how you spend money, Beatrice said. You don't have to say it. We can feel it. What you're feeling is your own conscience, Beatrice said. That's not my problem. Colette was quiet for a moment. You sound just like Mom. Thank you, Beatrice said. The conversation ended shortly after that. They remained civil, polite, but the distance grew. Roz called too, trying to play peacemaker. Can't we all just get along? We're family. I'm not fighting with anyone, Beatrice said. I'm just living my life. But you make us feel bad about our choices. How? Beatrice asked genuinely. When have I criticized your car, your house, anything? Roz didn't have an answer to that. At church, the whispers started. Small town, small church, everyone knew everyone's business. The women in Beatrice's Bible study group were mostly in their 50s and 60s. They'd known her since she was a child. They'd watched her grow up, get married, buy a house, and they had opinions. Beatrice, honey, said Patricia Morehouse after study one Wednesday in August. I heard about what happened at Vivian's party. Did you? Beatrice said flatly. And I just want you to know, Patricia continued, lowering her voice conspiratorially, that I think you're being wise. Too many people today living beyond their means. Thank you, Patricia. Of course it wouldn't hurt to update your wardrobe a little, Patricia added. First impressions matter, dear. Beatrice smiled tightly and left. At the grocery store, at the gas station, at the kids' school events, she could feel it. The judgment, the whispers. Not hostile exactly, more like pity, like she was doing something wrong by being frugal, like she was failing at the American dream. The message was clear. You're supposed to spend, you're supposed to upgrade, you're supposed to show your success through your possessions, and if you don't, there's something wrong with you. By the fall of 2006, Beatrice was genuinely questioning herself. She sat with Warren one night in October after dinner in their small paid-off house and said, "Am I crazy?" "No," Warren said. "Everyone thinks I am. Colette, Vivian, the church ladies. Even Roz is starting to pull away. So maybe they're right. Maybe I'm being too cautious. Maybe we should enjoy life more." Warren put down the newspaper he'd been reading. He was quiet for a long moment, thinking. "Do you know why I married you?" he finally said. Beatrice smiled despite herself. "My sparkling personality." "Your discipline," Warren said seriously. "I grew up poor, B, really poor. My dad drank. My mom worked 3 jobs. We never had anything. I watched them fight about money every single night. I swore I'd never live like that." He took her hand. "When I met you, you were different and you weren't impressed by flash. You knew the value of a dollar. You understood that security is more important than status. I knew I could build a life with you, a real life, not a performance." "But what if we're missing out?" Beatrice asked. "What if Vivian's right and we're just hoarding money we'll never spend?" "We're not hoarding," Warren said. "We're building freedom. Every dollar we save is a choice we get to make later. Early retirement, travel, helping our future kids with college, starting a business, whatever we want. But Colette and Vivian, they're prisoners. They have to keep working, keep earning, keep performing just to service their debt. They don't see it that way." "They will," Warren said quietly, "eventually." Evelyn's health declined slowly through 2006 and into 2007. The Alzheimer's wasn't severe yet, but the signs were there. She'd forget appointments, repeat stories she'd told an hour before, get confused about which day it was. Beatrice visited every Tuesday afternoon, helped with bills, made sure the house was clean, brought groceries. One Tuesday in March 2007, Beatrice found her mother sitting at the kitchen table staring at a photograph. It was from 1975. Evelyn Young standing in a living room full of new furniture, smiling, proud. Mom, Beatrice said gently, you okay? Evelyn looked up. Her eyes were clearer than they'd been in weeks, like the fog had lifted temporarily. This is the furniture I bought, she said, pointing at the photo. $18,000. It was beautiful, wasn't it? Yes, Mama. I don't even remember what happened to it, Evelyn said. We sold it, or gave it away. I can't recall. But I remember the debt. I remember lying awake at night wondering how we'd make the payment. I remember the shame of almost losing everything. She looked at Beatrice. The furniture is gone, the debt is gone, but the lesson remains. Do you understand? I understand, Beatrice said. Your sisters don't, Evelyn said. They will, but by then it might be too late. In November 2007, something happened that changed everything. Margot Blackwood was a neighbor, 56 years old, divorced, lived alone in a house 3 streets over from Beatrice. They weren't close friends, but they were friendly. Waved when they saw each other, chatted at the grocery store. Margot worked as an office manager at a dental practice, made about $43,000 a year. She had a nice house, a nice car, took nice vacations. She seemed to be doing fine. On November 14th, Margot didn't show up for work. Her boss called. No answer. Called again. Nothing. By noon, someone went to check on her. They found her in her bedroom. Bottle of pills on the nightstand, empty. She'd been dead for probably 6 hours. The note was short. I can't breathe under this weight anymore. I thought I could manage it. I was wrong. I'm sorry. The police found the financial records on her dining room table, laid out neatly, organized, like she wanted someone to understand. Credit card debt, $73,000. Home equity line of credit, $85,000. Personal loans, $37,000. Total $195,000. Monthly minimum payments, $4,200. Monthly income after taxes, $2,800. She'd been trapped, mathematically trapped. No way out except bankruptcy, which she couldn't bear. The shame would have destroyed her, so she chose another way. The funeral was on a Tuesday, small. Margot didn't have much family. Her daughter flew in from Seattle, 28 years old, looked numb, kept saying the same thing. I didn't know. She never told me. I didn't know. Beatrice attended with Warren. So did Evelyn, though she seemed confused about why they were there. Colette came. Roz came. Vivian didn't. The pastor gave a generic eulogy about God's mercy and eternal peace. He didn't mention the debt, didn't mention the suicide. Just talked about Margot's kindness, her smile, her love of gardening. After the service, people gathered in the church basement. Coffee and cookies, quiet conversations. Margot's daughter, Lauren, stood alone by the window. Beatrice approached her carefully. I'm so sorry for your loss, Beatrice said. Lauren turned. Are you... Everyone says that, but no one means it. They're all thinking the same thing. At least it wasn't me. That's not what I'm thinking. What are you thinking? Beatrice paused, chose her words carefully. I'm thinking your mother was trapped, and she couldn't see a way out. Lauren's face crumpled. She left me a letter, separate from the suicide note. Want to know what it said? Only if you want to tell me. Lauren pulled a piece of paper from her purse, unfolded it, read aloud, her voice shaking. My dearest Lauren, by the time you read this, you'll know what I've done, and you'll wonder why. Let me tell you, I owe $195,000. Credit cards, home equity loan, personal loans. I make $43,000 a year. After taxes, $29,000. My minimum payments are $50,000 a year. The math doesn't work. It will never work. Bankruptcy would destroy my reputation. Losing the house would humiliate me in front of everyone who thinks I'm successful. So I chose a third option. Don't make my mistakes, baby. Don't live on credit. Don't pretend to be rich when you're not. Don't sacrifice your peace for other people's opinions. I did, and it killed me. Lauren folded the letter, looked at Beatrice. Past tense. It killed me. She'd already decided. I'm so sorry, Beatrice whispered. You know what's worse? Lauren said. I had no idea. None. She posted vacation photos on Facebook 2 months ago, smiled at Thanksgiving, sent me a cheerful Christmas card. And the whole time she was planning this, she didn't want you to worry. She didn't want me to know she was failing, Lauren corrected, because admitting failure felt worse than dying. She looked out the window at the parking lot where people were leaving. Half these people are in the same situation, drowning in debt, pretending everything's fine, and in 5 years, 10 years, some of them will be standing where I am. Maybe your mother's story will wake them up, Beatrice said. Lauren laughed bitterly. No, it won't. People think they're different, smarter. That it won't happen to them. That's what my mom thought too. She turned to Beatrice. Are you in debt? No, why not? Because I'm scared of it, Beatrice said honestly. Terrified, actually. Good, Lauren said. Stay scared. It might save your life. The funeral affected people differently. Colette was shaken. She went home and looked at her own debt. Mortgage $387,000. HELOC $142,000. Credit cards $16,000. Total $545,000. But that was different, she told herself. That was secured debt, Nikki set backed. Real estate, Shiyu, not credit card debt for vacations and clothes like Margot. Still, she had trouble sleeping that night. Colette went home from the funeral and looked at her own debt. $545,000. For the first time, she felt a flutter of real fear. She pushed it down, told herself Margot's situation was different. Margot was alone. Margot made less money. Margot was mentally ill. Colette was fine. Everything was fine. Except it wasn't. In 14 months, she'd be standing in her mother's kitchen at midnight, begging for money to save a house that was already lost. Roz cried for 2 days. She'd known Margot better than the others. They'd been in a book club together years ago. She looked at her car payment. $640 a month. 54 months left. Total remaining $34,560. It wasn't crushing, not like Margot's debt, but it was there, every month, inflexible. Vivian didn't attend the funeral, but she heard about it. She was unmoved. That's mental illness, she said when Colette mentioned it. Nothing to do with money management. But alone late at night, Vivian looked at her numbers too. Mortgage $520,000. HELOC $95,000. Credit cards $41,000. Personal loan for the outdoor kitchen $28,000. Total $684,000. Monthly payments $5,900. Household income $12,000. Tight but manageable. As long as Richard kept his job. As long as her design business kept bringing in clients. As long as nothing went wrong. Everything was fine as long as nothing went wrong. Christmas 2007 came. The last normal Christmas, though no one knew it yet. Colette and Garrett hosted. The house looked perfect. A 12-foot tree in the living room. Garland draped over every doorway. Catered dinner. Thoughtful gifts for everyone. Beatrice brought a casserole and homemade cookies. Her gifts were modest but personal. A photo album for Evelyn with pictures from her childhood. A book for Colette that she'd mentioned wanting. A warm scarf for Roz. Vivian arrived late in the Range Rover carrying shopping bags from Nordstrom. Expensive gifts. Designer brands. Things people wanted but didn't need. They ate. They drank. They opened presents. On the surface, everything was perfect. But undercurrents ran through the evening. Colette checking her phone constantly, answering work emails even on Christmas. The real estate market was slowing. Sales were down. She was worried. Roz quieter than usual, nursing one glass of wine all night. Theodore had been laid off for 6 weeks in November and December. They dipped into savings to make the car payment. Vivian louder than necessary, talking about the new renovation she was planning. In addition, guest suite, $40,000. She had it all figured a hoot. Another HELOC, easy, and Beatrice watching it all, saying little, noticing everything. At the end of the evening, as people were leaving, Evelyn pulled Beatrice aside. Next year will be different, Evelyn said. What do you mean, Mama? But Evelyn just shook her head. The clarity was fading. The fog was returning. Different, she said again. Everything's going to be different. January 2008 arrived like a stranger at a party. Unwelcome, uninvited, impossible to ignore. The news started talking about subprime mortgages, housing bubbles, credit crunches, words that meant nothing to most people. Words that would soon mean everything. Real estate listings were piling up. Houses sitting on the market for months. Prices starting to slide. Just a little at first. 5%, 10%, barely noticeable. Colette's sales dropped. In 2007, she'd closed 14 properties. Good year. $95,000 in commission. In January 2008, she closed 1 property. In February, none. In March, 1. By April, she was panicking. Her mortgage payment was $2,650. HELOC minimum payment was $890. Credit cards were $470. Total $4,010 a month. Garrett's salary covered about $3,800. They'd been using her commission to make up the difference and cover everything else. Food, utilities, gas, insurance. But if she wasn't selling houses, it'll pick up, she told Garrett in April. Summer's always busy. Summer was not busy. By June 2008, the word recession was being used. Officially, it had started in December 2007. But people were just now feeling it. Theodore's construction company cut his hours by 30%. Roz's school announced budget cuts. No raises, no bonuses. Their car payment was suddenly much harder to make. Vivian's design business dried up. Who renovates their house during a recession? No one. Her March income $11,000. Her May income $1,800. Richard's pharmaceutical sales were down too. Doctors were prescribing generics. His commission dropped by 22%. Their $5,900 monthly debt payment suddenly felt impossible. But they kept up appearances, kept pretending, kept performing, because admitting you were in trouble felt like failure. And failure was unacceptable. Beatrice and Warren watched it all unfold. They'd been reading the financial news, listening to economists. They'd seen it coming. In October 2007, they'd moved $50,000 from stocks to cash, just in case. It seemed paranoid at the time. By September 2008, when Lehman Brothers collapsed and the market cratered, they were glad they had. Their jobs were stable. Accounting firms don't disappear during recessions. They get busier. People need help filing taxes, managing bankruptcies, restructuring debt. Their house was paid off, no mortgage, no HELOC, no home equity loan. If they lost their jobs tomorrow, they could survive on savings for 3 years. They felt something they hadn't expected to feel: guilt. Guilt for being okay when everyone else was struggling. Guilt for having listened when others didn't. Guilt for the relief they felt at being debt-free. Warren said one night, "We shouldn't feel bad for doing the right thing." "I know," Beatrice said, "but I do." In October 2008, Colette's Mercedes was repossessed. She'd missed 3 payments. The lease company didn't care that she was going through a rough patch. The contract was clear. Missed 3 payments, they take the car. They came at 6 a.m. Tow truck, 2 men, professional, polite, implacable. Neighbors watched from their windows. Colette stood in her driveway in her bathrobe and cried. Garrett put his arm around her and led her inside. They didn't talk about it. What was there to say? The repo truck disappeared around the corner at 6:17 a.m. Colette stood in her driveway in her bathrobe, watching neighbors peek through curtains, and felt something break inside her. Not just embarrassment, something deeper. The realization that she'd been performing success for 8 years and the show was finally over. In 6 months, the house would be gone too. The HELOC, the credit cards, everything. But that morning, all she could think about was the Mercedes, and how she'd never even owned it. That afternoon, Colette called Beatrice. "Can I borrow your car?" she asked. Her voice was small, ashamed. "Of course," Beatrice said. "I'll bring it over." "Don't," Colette said quickly. "I'll come get it. I don't want you to see." She didn't finish the sentence. When Colette arrived at Beatrice's house an hour later, she looked hollow. Defeated, she was driving Garrett's truck. Beatrice handed her the keys to the Honda. "Keep it as long as you need," Beatrice said. "Thank you," Colette whispered. She started to walk to the car, then stopped. Turned back. "You were right," she said. "About everything. Mom was right. I should have listened." "Eddie." "No," Colette said. "Let me say it. I'm drowning. The house, the HELOC, the credit cards, everything. I don't know how to get out. And the worst part is I did it to myself. I knew better. Mom told me, you showed me, and I did it anyway because I wanted people to think I was successful." Tears were running down her face now. "I'm not successful. I'm a fraud, and everyone's about to find out." Beatrice stepped forward and hugged her sister, held her while she sobbed. "You're not a fraud," Beatrice said quietly. "You're human. We all make mistakes." "Not you," Colette said bitterly. "You never make mistakes." "I've made plenty," Beatrice said. "I just didn't make this one." The first domino fell in February 2009, and it wasn't the one anyone expected. Vivian Bradford filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy on February 23rd, a Monday, cold, gray, the kind of day that matches the color of despair. The filing was public record. Within hours, people knew. Small town, church gossip network, Facebook, which was still new enough in 2009 that people thought privacy settings were suggestions rather than requirements. By Tuesday afternoon, everyone in Bloomington knew that Vivian and Richard Bradford were bankrupt. $684,000 in debt, unable to pay. Foreclosure proceedings already started on the house. Colette heard about it from a client. She was showing a house trying desperately to close a sale when the woman said casually, "Isn't Vivian Bradford your sister-in-law? I heard she's losing everything." Colette's stomach dropped. She excused herself, went to her car, and called Vivian. No answer. She called Richard. "It's true," he said quietly. "We filed last week." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you have your own problems, Colette. We all do." The call ended there. Short, brutal, honest. The details emerged slowly then all at once. Richard had lost his job in December. Pharmaceutical company downsizing. 22 years with the firm, gone in a 30-minute meeting at 2 weeks before Christmas. His severance was generous by corporate standards, 6 months salary, but 6 months of $45,000 pre-tax meant about $28,000 after taxes. Spread over 6 months, that was $4,600 a month. Their debt payments were $5,900 a month. The math was simple, impossible, final. Vivian's design business had brought in $1,800 in January, $1,100 in February. 2 projects, both small, both clients who paid late and negotiated down the price. They tried. God, they'd tried. Vivian picked up a job at Pottery Barn 20 hours a week at $12 an hour. Richard applied to 73 jobs in 2 months. Got 4 interviews. No offers. They sold things. The Range Rover went back to the dealer. They bought a 1999 Toyota Camry for $2,800 cash. Vivian sold her designer handbags on eBay. Richard sold his golf clubs, his watch collection, his fishing equipment. They raised $11,000 selling their possessions. It wasn't enough. It was never going to be enough. The bankruptcy attorney laid it out cleanly. You're $684,000 in debt. Your house is underwater by $130,000. You've missed 3 mortgage payments. Foreclosure is inevitable. You need to file. Now get ahead of it and start over. So they did. The foreclosure sale was set for July 17, 2009. Vivian couldn't watch. She and Richard had already moved out in May into a 2-bedroom apartment across town. $900 a month, beige carpet, white walls, the kind of place you live in when you're starting over or giving up and they weren't sure which category they fell into. The house sold for $412,000. It had appraised for $650,000 in 2006. Vivian had put $112,000 into renovations. Total loss, $350,000 in 3 years. The Mediterranean tile from Italy, the light fixtures from Chicago, the custom millwork. All of it belonged to someone else now, a cash buyer from Indianapolis who turned it into a rental property. Vivian stopped going to church, stopped answering calls, unfriended most people on Facebook. Her last post was in March. Sometimes life humbles you. Appreciate those who stick around. 13 people liked it. Colette wasn't one of them. She was too busy drowning herself. Colette's unraveling was slower, a death by 1,000 cuts rather than a single catastrophic blow. March 2009, missed first mortgage payment, $2,650. She just didn't have it. April 2009, missed his second mortgage payment, called the bank. They were understanding but firm. We need payment within 30 days or we begin foreclosure proceedings. May 2009, scraped together one payment. Borrowed $1,500 from a friend, put $1,100 on a credit card advance, begged Garrett's parents for the rest, made the payment, felt a temporary relief that lasted exactly 6 hours before the guilt and shame crashed back in. June 2009, missed again. The letter came on a Monday. Official, legal. Notice of default and election to sell under deed of trust. She had 90 days. Her credit cards were maxed, $73,000 spread across 8 cards. The minimum payments alone were $2,100 a month. She couldn't make them. Late fees piled up, interest compounded. Some cards went to collections. The phone calls started, 7 a.m., 9 p.m. Weekends, debt collectors, professional, relentless. Garrett's income was enough to keep them fed and the utilities on barely. But not the house, not the HELOC, not the cards, not the car payments. In June, they stopped answering the phone. The worst part wasn't the money. Colette had prepared herself for that in a way. She'd known for months it was coming. The worst part was the eyes. At the grocery store, at church, at the gas station. People who'd admired her house, envied her success, sought her advice. Now they looked at her with pity, or worse, satisfaction. The quiet joy people feel when someone who seemed perfect turns out to be just as flawed as everyone else. She saw a former client at Target in May. The woman pretended not to see her, turned her cart around mid-aisle and went the other way. like foreclosure was contagious. Colette stood there holding a box of generic cereal, blinking back tears, wondering how her life had become this. She went to her mother's house in July. Alone. Garrett didn't know. She told him she was showing a property. Evelyn was 77 years old now. The Alzheimer's had progressed. She had good days and bad days. Beatrice managed her medications, her bills, her appointments. On good days, Evelyn knew who everyone was. On bad days, she thought Beatrice was her sister dead for 30 years. Colette knocked on the door at 11 p.m., late enough that Evelyn would be home, late enough that neighbors wouldn't see. Evelyn answered in her bathrobe. Confused at first, then her face cleared. "Colette, baby, what's wrong?" "Can I come in, Mama?" They sat in the kitchen, the same kitchen where Evelyn had told them the story about the furniture, about the debt, about Grandmother Hutchins selling her cottage. Colette had been 43 then, 6 years ago, a lifetime ago. Colette's hands shook as she held the teacup. Evelyn sat across from her, smaller than Colette remembered. Frailer, but her eyes were clear. "How much do you need?" Evelyn asked. 18,000 to catch up the mortgage. Buy me some time." Time for what, Colette? To figure it out, to sell some houses, to turn things around. Evelyn was quiet. Steam rose from her tea. "How much total do you owe?" Colette's voice cracked. 545,000. The number hung in the air like smoke. "Say it again," Evelyn said softly. "Mom, say it out. Oh, wait, let yourself hear it. $545,000. And your house is worth, I don't know, maybe 350 in this market, maybe less. So you're underwater by almost 200,000. Yes, Evelyn stood, walked to the sink, looked out the window at darkness. "Do you remember your grandmother's cottage?" "A little. She lived there before she moved in with us." "Do you know why she moved in?" "You said she sold it to help you." "I said more than that, Colette, but you weren't listening." "None of you were." Evelyn turned around. In the kitchen light, she looked every one of her 77 years. "I was 39. Your age exactly. I owed $22,000 and I couldn't pay. My mother was 83. She owned one thing in this world. That cottage, 1,200 square feet, 2 bedrooms, a porch where she used to sit and watch the sunset." "Mom, I know. Do you know what it cost her? Not the money, the dignity. She'd worked for 40 years to own something, to be independent, to not be a burden." Evelyn's voice cracked. "And I took that from her, with my stupidity, with my pride, with my need to look successful." "You didn't take anything. She gave it. Because I put her in a position where she had to choose between saving me and watching me drown." "What kind of choice is that for a mother?" Colette was crying now. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have listened." "Sorry doesn't pay debt, baby." Evelyn sat back down, reached across the table, took Colette's hands. "I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to really hear it." "Okay. Your grandmother lived with us for 2 years after she sold that cottage. 2 years, and every single day I watched her disappear. A little quieter, a little smaller, a little sadder. She didn't blame you. She didn't have to. I blame myself. Every morning when I woke up and saw her in the spare bedroom instead of her cottage, every time I heard her tell people she was staying with family for a while instead of I live in my own home, Evelyn's grip tightened. She died in 1978. The doctor said stroke, but I knew better. She died of a broken heart, and I broke it. Mom, you can't think like that. At her funeral, your father pulled me aside, made me promise something. Never again, Evelyn. Never put yourself in a position where you have to ask someone to save you from your own choices. I'm not asking you to save me, just to help me. What's the difference?" Colette didn't have an answer. Evelyn stood again, went to her bedroom, came back with her checkbook. She sat, opened it, wrote a check, $18,000. She held it, didn't hand it over. "I'll give you this, but there are conditions." "What conditions?" "You take this money, you sell that house. Tomorrow, list it, short sale if you have to. You take whatever you get. You pay off what you can. You walk away from what you can't." "I can't." "You declare bankruptcy if necessary. You start over with nothing, but you start over clean." "Mom, I've put everything into that house." "You've put debt into that house." Evelyn's voice rose. "You don't own it. The bank owns it. You're just paying rent to their asset. But everyone will know I failed. Everyone already knows, Colette. The Mercedes was repossessed in your driveway at 6 a.m. Your neighbors watched. It's all over town. Colette flinched like she'd been slapped. Evelyn's voice softened. Baby, listen to me. The failure already happened. The question now is, do you fail and drown, or do you fail and survive? I don't want to declare bankruptcy. I don't want to lose the house. I don't want everyone to see me like this. What you want doesn't matter anymore, Evelyn said gently. The math has already decided you owe $545,000. You're making maybe $40,000 a year now. Even if you paid every penny toward debt and lived on air, it would take you 14 years. And that's assuming zero interest. You can't, nobody can. The numbers don't work. Colette put her head in her hands. How did I get here? The same way I did, the same way my mother warned me about. You thought you were different. You thought times had changed. You thought the rules didn't apply to you. Were you this cruel to yourself? Crueler, Evelyn said, for years, until your father finally made me forgive myself. She held out the check. Take this, sell the house, start over, or don't. Walk away right now and figure it out yourself. But if you walk away, don't come back in 3 months asking why I didn't save you when I tried. Colette looked at the check, at her mother, at the worn linoleum floor of a house that had stood for 200 years. If I take this and do what you're saying, I'll have nothing. You'll have freedom, Evelyn said. No debt, no payments, no one to answer to. You'll be 49 years old and you can start completely fresh. That's not what I wanted. I know, baby, but it's what you get, and trust me, it's better than the alternative. Colette stood up, walked to the door. I can't, she whispered. Then you'll lose everything anyway, Evelyn said, but it'll be on your terms, not mine. Colette opened the door, stepped into the cold July night. Colette, Evelyn called. She turned. Evelyn's face was wet with tears. I love you, no matter what you choose. I love you. I know, Mama. And one more thing. In 5 years, when this is all over and you're on the other side, you'll understand that tonight I'm not being cruel. I'm being kind. Colette left. She never took the check. 6 months later, she wished she had. Roz made her decision in August. She'd been watching Vivian's collapse, watching Colette's slow-motion car crash, seeing where this road led. Her debt was smaller, manageable theoretically, but Theodore had been out of work for 7 months now. Construction jobs had evaporated. He was working part-time at Home Depot for $11 an hour. Their savings were down to $23,000, from $153,000 just 3 years ago. The Lexus payment was $640 a month. They had 41 months left, total remaining $26,240. If Theodore didn't find better work soon, they'd burn through their savings in a year, maybe less. Roz sat at the kitchen table one night running the numbers. Theodore sat across from her waiting. We need to sell the house, she said finally. Theodore nodded. I was thinking the same thing. It's probably underwater like Colette's. Probably, but even if we take a loss, we eliminate the mortgage payment. We can rent something small. Start over. Roz looked at her husband. He'd aged in the past year, gray in his beard, lines around his eyes. The stress was killing both of them slowly. I should have listened to Mom, she said. We both should have, Theodore said, but we didn't, so now we deal with it. They listed the house in September. It had appraised for $320,000 in 2006. They owed $260,000. It sold in October for $248,000. They were short $12,000. The bank agreed to a short sale. They had to sign a note saying they'd pay the $12,000 over time, but it was better than foreclosure. They walked away with nothing. The down payment, the payments, the renovations, all gone. But they also walked away from the debt. They rented a townhouse, $1,100 a month, 2 bedrooms, small, clean, serviceable. Roz sold the Lexus, got $21,000 for it, paid off the loan, had nothing left. She bought a 2003 Honda Civic with 70,000 miles for $4,500. Cash, from what was left of their savings. Theodore found steadier work in November. Property management company, $32,000 a year. Benefits, stable. They were okay. Diminished, humbled, broke, but okay. Roz called Beatrice in December. I owe you an apology, she said. You don't, Beatrice said. I do. I judged you. I thought you were being cheap, scared. I didn't understand that you were being wise. Roz, let me say this, please. I've lost almost everything. The house, the car, our savings. And the worst part is, I did it to myself. I wanted what Colette had. What Vivian had, I wanted to look successful. Her voice broke. I'm sorry I made you feel bad for doing the right thing. You didn't make me feel bad, Beatrice lied gently. Yes, I did. We all did. And you were right, and we were wrong, and I'm sorry. They talked for an hour, really talked, for the first time in years. When they hung up, Beatrice cried, not from vindication, from sadness, because being right didn't feel good when the cost was watching her sisters suffer. September 17th, 2013. The auction. Colette's house had been in foreclosure proceedings for over a year. She'd hired a lawyer, filed motions, delayed the inevitable. But eventually, inevitably, this day came. The crowd was smaller than Vivian's had been. 40 people, investors mostly, some neighbors, some curious onlookers. Colette stood in the back. She'd moved out in June. She and Garrett were renting a small apartment. 2 bedrooms, $700 a month. Garrett's salary covered it. Barely. She'd filed for bankruptcy in March. Chapter 7. Discharged $504,000 in debt. Credit ruined for 7 years. Freedom purchased at the cost of her pride. She didn't have to be here. The lawyer said she didn't need to attend, but she wanted to see it. Bear witness. Own the failure completely. The auctioneer began. Fast-talking, practiced, professional. Starting bid $275,000. Do I hear 280? 280, thank you. 290, 295. Colette closed her eyes. She'd bought this house for $485,000. Spent $158,000 on renovations. Total investment, $643,000. The bank was about to sell it for under $300,000. 300, thank you. 305, 310, 310, we have 310. Do I hear 312? 312, a voice said. Female, familiar. Colette's eyes snapped open. Beatrice was standing near the front. Plain clothes, sensible shoes. She was holding a paddle, number 17. 315, the auctioneer called. No going once at 312, going twice. Sold to bidder number 17 for $312,000. The auctioneer pointed at Beatrice. Please see the clerk for payment arrangements. Beatrice walked to the table, pulled a cashier's check from her purse. Not a pre-approval letter, not a loan commitment, a check for the full amount. Cash buyer. Colette stood frozen as people dispersed. Beatrice finished the paperwork, signed forms, received keys. Then Beatrice walked over. They stood facing each other. Sisters, strangers, 2 women who'd started at the same place and ended up in different worlds. You bought my house, Colette said. It wasn't an accusation, just a statement. Yes. With cash. Yes. You have $300,000 in cash. I have $420,000, Beatrice said quietly. Warren and I have been saving for 14 years. Colette laughed. It came out wrong. Bitter. Of course you have. Perfect, Beatrice. Always doing the right thing. Eddie, don't call me that. Don't stand here in your Target clothes and your sensible shoes and pretend you're not gloating. You won. Congratulations. Beatrice's face was calm, sad. I didn't win anything, she said. I just didn't lose. There's a difference. Yes. Colette looked at the house, her house, someone else's house now. What are you going to do with it, she asked. Rent it out, maybe sell it in a few years when the market recovers. So you'll make money off my failure? No, Beatrice said. I'll make money off my patience. She reached into her purse, pulled out an envelope. Here, she said. Colette took it, opened it. Inside was a key and a note. Etty, you can stay here for 6 months, rent-free. Use the time to save up. Find your footing. Figure out your next step. No judgment, no strings, just family. Colette read it twice, then looked at her sister. Why would you do this? She whispered. Because you're my sister, and because Mom would want me to. Mom was right about everything. I know. I should have listened. We all should have, Beatrice said, to someone, sometime, about something, but we're human. We think we know better. Colette started crying, real crying, the kind that comes from somewhere deep, the kind that happens when you finally stop pretending and let yourself feel everything you've been holding back. I'm so sorry, she sobbed, for everything, for judging you, for mocking your car, for making you feel bad, for being such a bitch when all you were doing was being smart. Beatrice stepped forward and hugged her sister, held her while she cried. You weren't a bitch, Beatrice said softly. You were scared. We're all scared. Some of us just hide it differently. They stood there for a long time. The crowd was gone now, just the two of them in the driveway of a house that used to mean everything and now meant nothing except a very expensive lesson. I don't deserve this, Colette said finally. Probably not, Beatrice said, but you're getting it anyway. That's called grace. The years between 2009 and 2012 were lean and hard and transformative. Colette rebuilt slowly. She took a job as an administrative assistant at a law firm, $42,000 a year. Benefits, stable, boring, exactly what she needed. She and Garrett lived in Beatrice's house for 7 months, saved every penny, $1,100 a month. By the time they moved out, they had $7,700 in savings. Not much, but more than they'd had in years. They rented a small apartment, started over, bought furniture at Goodwill, shopped at Aldi, learned to live on half what they'd spent before. Colette went to therapy, dealt with the shame, the failure, the crushing weight of having lost everything. I thought I was building wealth, she told her therapist in 2010, but I was just building debt, and I didn't know the difference until it was too late. Slowly, painfully, she forgave herself. Roz and Theodore stabilized. They'd lost the most in terms of percentage, nearly 90% of their net worth, but they'd also escaped with the least damage. No bankruptcy, just a short sale and some bruised credit. Theodore worked his way up at the property management company. By 2011, he was making $48,000. By 2012, $52,000. Roz still taught, still made $41,000. They saved, lived small, rebuilt their emergency fund. By the end of 2011, they had $18,000 saved. By 2012, $31,000. They didn't talk about the Lexus. Roz drove her 2003 Civic and felt nothing but relief every time she didn't have a car payment. Beatrice and Warren continued doing exactly what they'd always done. Working, saving, investing. The recession had actually been good for them financially. They'd bought stocks when the market bottomed out in March 2009. Index funds, boring, safe. They'd invested $40,000 when the S&P 500 was at 6. By 2012, the market had recovered to 1,400. Their $40,000 was worth $85,000. They bought another property in 2010, a foreclosure, paid $130,000 cash, fixed it up for $12,000, rented it out for $1,400 a month. By 2012, they owned 3 properties. Their original house, Colette's former house, the 2010 foreclosure, total value about $650,000, total debt zero, net worth $920,000. But they didn't talk about it, didn't flaunt it. Still drove the Honda now with 195,000 miles, still shopped at Target, still had date night at Applebee's. The only difference was peace, deep, abiding, unshakable peace. Evelyn's decline accelerated after 2010. The Alzheimer's was relentless. By 2011, she didn't always recognize her daughters. She'd call Colette mother sometimes, thought Roz was her sister. Only Beatrice seemed to anchor her consistently. She moved into a memory care facility in January 2012. The farmhouse was too much. Beatrice couldn't manage it and care for her mother properly. The farmhouse sold for $220,000. Beatrice used the money to pay for the facility, $12,000 a month. Evelyn would have hated the cost, but she didn't remember enough to care. In May 2012, Evelyn had one final moment of perfect clarity. Colette was visiting. It was a Tuesday afternoon. Colette came every Tuesday now reading to her mother, even though Evelyn usually didn't remember who she was. But this day, Evelyn looked at Colette and said clearly, "Letty, my Letty." Colette's eyes filled with tears. "Mama, you know me." "Of course I know you. You're my daughter." Evelyn reached for Colette's hand. "You learn," she said. Not a question, a statement. "Yes, Mama, I learned. It cost you everything." "Almost everything," Colette said, "but I'm still here. That's all that matters. Still here, still breathing, still able to start over." Evelyn's grip tightened. "Your grandmother forgave me for being foolish. I forgive you. Now forgive yourself." "I'm trying, Mama. Try harder. Life's too short to carry shame." They sat together for an hour. Evelyn asked about Beatrice, about Roz. She was lucid, present, like the disease had loosened its grip temporarily. Then as suddenly as it came, the clarity faded. Evelyn looked at Colette with confused eyes and said, "Who are you?" Colette kissed her mother's forehead and left. Evelyn Margaret Hutchins died on August 3, 2012. She was 78 years old. Complications from Alzheimer's, which is code for her body finally giving up the fight. The funeral was small. Family, close friends. The pastor who'd known her for 40 years gave the eulogy. talked about her strength, her faith, her devotion to family. Beatrice stood at the podium afterward and read a letter Evelyn had written in 2005, right after giving her daughters their inheritance. Beatrice had found it in her mother's papers, sealed in an envelope marked, "Read at my funeral." The letter was short: "My dearest daughters, if you're hearing this, I'm gone. And if my mind went before my body, I'm grateful. I'd rather not remember the end. I hope I taught you something worth keeping. Not about money, though that's important. About freedom. Debt is slavery. I don't mean that metaphorically. I mean it literally. When you owe money, you work for someone else. You lose your choices, your options, your ability to say no. I learned this the hard way. My mother paid the price for my lesson. I hope you learned it more gently than I did. But if you didn't, if you had to fail to understand, know that I forgive you. Failure is part of being human. The only real failure is refusing to learn from it. I love you all, equally, completely, forever. Live free. Mom, there wasn't a dry eye in the church. Legacy. 19 years passed. The world kept turning. Technology advanced. Presidents changed. Markets rose and fell and rose again. The three Hutchins sisters aged into their 50s and 60s. Gray hair, reading glasses. The slow accumulation of years. In April 2024, Beatrice received a package in the mail. It was from her mother's lawyer, old, now nearly retired himself. The note attached said simply, "Your mother left this with instructions to deliver 19 years after her death. J.M." Inside was a sealed letter in a small leather journal. Beatrice opened the letter first. Her mother's handwriting. Shaky but legible. Dated 2005. "Dearest Beatrice, if you're reading this, it's Twitter. You're 55 years old. Hard to imagine, isn't it? I'm writing this the day after I gave you girls your inheritance. I know how this story ends. I've lived it. I've watched it. I know which of you will listen and which won't. I know it will cost Colette and Roz everything. I know they'll suffer. I know you'll watch and hurt for them. But here's what I need you to understand. Their suffering will teach them what my words never could. Experience is the cruelest teacher, but the most effective. By now, you're probably comfortable, maybe even wealthy. You listened, you saved, you built freedom. But wealth without generosity is just hoarding, and hoarding is its own kind of poverty. Grandmother Hutchins didn't fail when she sold her cottage to save me. She succeeded at what mattered most: love. Your sisters made mistakes. They paid for them. They learned. Now it's your turn to teach the final lesson. Share your abundance, not as rescue, as connection. Help them build what they should have built 19 years ago, not with judgment, with grace. Money is freedom. Freedom is choice. Choose connection over vindication. I love you always. Mom, P.S. Give Colette the journal. She'll understand. Beatrice opened the journal with trembling hands. It was Grandmother Hutchins' financial ledger. From 1965 to 1978. Every income, every expense, every decision. The last entry dated June 3rd, 1976. Sold cottage today, $30,000. Gave money to Evelyn. She cried, begged me not to. But what's a mother to do? Let her child drown never. This cottage was just wood and brick. My daughter is flesh and blood. Easy choice, would do it again. No regrets. Beneath that, in Evelyn's handwriting added years later, she died thinking I was worth it. I spent 26 years trying to be. Beatrice called Colette that afternoon. Can you come over? I need to show you something. Colette arrived an hour later. She was 62 now, still working at the law firm, making $62,000 a year. She owned a small condo paid off in 2020, drove a 2016 Toyota Camry also paid off, had $84,000 in retirement savings. Not wealthy, but stable, debt-free, sleeping well. Beatrice handed her the letter in the journal. Colette read slowly, tears streaming down her face. When she finished, she looked at her younger sister. Mom knew, she whispered. She knew I'd fail. She knew you'd learn, Beatrice corrected. I wasted so much time, so much money. You learned a lesson worth more than money. Colette laughed through her tears. That's easy for you to say. You're rich. I'm comfortable, Beatrice said, and I want to talk to you about that. She'd been planning this for weeks, since finding old notes in her mother's papers, since realizing what Evelyn wanted. I own 4 properties now, Beatrice said. Warren and I are thinking about semi-retirement. We need someone to manage the properties. Handle tenants' repairs, rent collection, all of it. You want to hire a property manager? I want to hire you. 30% of all rental income. Right now, that's about $4,800 a month. Plus your current salary, you'd be making over $100,000 a year. Colette stared. B, this isn't charity. I need someone I trust. Someone who understands the value of money because they lost it. Someone who won't cut corners or overlook problems. I don't know anything about property management. You'll learn, like you learned everything else. Beatrice leaned forward. But more than that, Mom's last letter said to share my abundance. Not out of obligation, out of love. Colette started crying again. After everything I did, the way I treated you, you'd still... You're my sister, Beatrice said simply. And Mom's last wish was that I share my abundance. Not as charity, as connection. This isn't me saving you. This is us building something together. That Sunday, the three sisters had dinner together. First time in years, all three were in the same room. Roz was 59, still teaching, making $54,000 a year. Theodore was in middle management at the property company, making $68,000. They'd rebuilt their net worth to $280,000, owned a small house paid off, would retire comfortably in 6 years. They sat around Beatrice's table, the same table where they'd had so many meals as children. Beatrice had told them about the letter, about Grandmother Hutchins' journal, about Evelyn's final wishes. She forgave us before we even made the mistakes, Colette said quietly. She knew we'd fail, and she loved us anyway. That's what mothers do, Roz said. They talked late into the night about the houses they'd lost, the money they'd wasted, the lessons learned the hard way, but mostly they talked about freedom, real freedom, the kind that comes from owing nothing, needing nothing, choosing everything. I make a third what I made in 2007, Colette said, but I'm happier now than I was then. Because you're free, Beatrice said. Because I'm free, Colette agreed. Epilogue. Beatrice sat at her computer the next day and typed out the story, all of it. Her mother's warning, her sister's choices, the collapse, the rebuilding. She ended it with a message, I know what you're thinking. This could never happen to me. I'm smarter than Colette, more careful than Vivian. I'd never make those mistakes. Colette thought that too. In 2005, when she was 43, successful, confident, sure she understood leverage better than her old-fashioned mother. Vivian thought that too, when she was renovating her dream house, when everyone on Facebook was congratulating her, when she felt like she'd finally made it. They weren't stupid. They weren't reckless. They were normal. They just made one mistake. They financed their lifestyle. And lifestyle debt is a trap. Not because the things you buy are bad, but because the debt doesn't care about your circumstances. Your payment is due whether you have a job or not, whether the economy is good or bad, whether you're healthy or sick. Debt is inflexible. Life is not. Beatrice understood this, not because she was smarter, because she was more scared. She'd watched her mother almost lose everything in the 1970s. She'd watched her grandmother sacrifice everything to save her daughter. She'd learned that debt doesn't discriminate, so she chose differently. Not perfectly, not without temptation, not without moments of doubt when she watched her sisters living larger, driving better cars, taking nicer vacations. But she chose freedom over flash. And 19 years later, she owns 4 houses. Her sisters are still recovering from bankruptcy. The difference, one decision, made in 2005, in a farmhouse kitchen, when an old woman told them something they didn't want to hear. 2 didn't listen, 1 did. Which one are you going to be? Because someday, maybe tomorrow, maybe 10 years from now, someone's going to offer you something you can't afford. A car, a house, a renovation, a lifestyle upgrade, and you're going to have to choose. You can finance it. Everyone does. It's normal, it's expected. It's the American dream. Or you can wait, save, buy it when you can afford it. Look cheap in the meantime. Deal with the judgment, the comments, the feeling that everyone else is living better. One choice leads to freedom. One leads to debt. Colette knows which is which now. Vivian knows too, though she'll never admit it. The question is, do you have to learn the hard way? Or can you learn from their mistakes? Evelyn Hutchins died in 2012. But her lesson lives on. Never finance your lifestyle. If you can't pay cash, you can't afford it. It's not sexy. It's not exciting. It won't get you likes on social media. But it will let you sleep at night. And sleep, real deep, peaceful sleep, is more valuable than any house, any car, any possession you could ever finance. Choose wisely. Your future self will thank you.